On a quiet June morning in 2024, the world changed. The sun rose over cities that had no idea their destinies were about to be rewritten in fire and steel. Before dawn, Israeli fighter jets thundered over Iran, launching Operation Rising Lion, a bold, direct assault. The skies above the Middle East roared with the sound of engines and the promise of conflict. This was no covert strike. It was open war, a message from Tel Aviv to Tehran. Israel would not wait for threats to become reality. The world watched as the boundaries of diplomacy shattered in real time. Years of tension had erupted. Israel believed Iran was on the brink of nuclear capability, an existential red line. The stakes had been building for years, with every negotiation and every intelligence report. Diplomacy and sanctions had failed. Now only force remained. The world's patience had run out, and the time for talk was over. The operation aimed to cripple Iran's nuclear ambitions and military command in one swift blow. Every target was chosen to send a message: Israel would not allow its enemies to gain the upper hand. As the dust settled, the scale was clear. This was a multi-pronged attack across Iran. Explosions echoed from city to city, leaving devastation in their wake. Airfields burned, military bases lay in ruins, and even Iran's most secure nuclear sites were devastated. The precision and ferocity of the strikes stunned military analysts worldwide. The world watched in shock. Israel had risked all to stop Iran, firing the first shot in a new war. Newsrooms buzzed with urgency as families huddled around televisions fearing what would come next. The Israeli Prime Minister called it a defensive necessity, citing irrefutable intelligence and a duty to protect future generations. The nation was told this was a fight for survival, not just strategy. The message was global: Israel would act decisively to ensure its survival. World leaders scrambled to respond, their statements echoing across continents. But in striking first, Israel had ignited a regional powder keg. The shockwaves of the attack rippled through every capital in the region, raising fears of a wider war. The question was no longer if Iran would respond, but how, and how soon. Iran's leaders gathered in urgent meetings, their military put on high alert, and the world held its breath. The world braced for the next move, knowing the conflict had only just begun. International forces were placed on standby, and anxiety gripped millions. Operation Rising Lion was not just a military strike, it was a turning point for the Middle East. The region's future now hung in the balance, with uncertainty and fear spreading far beyond the battlefield. The stakes had never been higher. Families sought shelter, soldiers readied for battle, and leaders weighed their next moves with the fate of millions at stake. The countdown to retaliation had already started. Every second brought the world closer to a new and dangerous chapter. The firestorm was unleashed, and there was no turning back. The Middle East and the world would never be the same again. Operation Rising Lion was a breathtaking display of military precision, coordination, and technological dominance, showcasing Israel's ability to orchestrate complex operations on multiple fronts simultaneously. Israeli F-35 Adir stealth fighters soared undetected deep into Iranian airspace, striking heavily fortified nuclear sites at Natanz and Fordow with advanced bunker-busting bombs, crippling Iran's nuclear ambitions in a matter of minutes. But the assault didn't stop there. Within hours, Iranian command centers, IRGC bases, and drone manufacturing factories were all hit in rapid succession, leaving a trail of devastation and confusion. Naval facilities near Bandar Abbas erupted in flames, threatening to undermine Iran's grip on the vital Strait of Hormuz and sending shockwaves through global energy markets. Simultaneously, elite Israeli cyber units unleashed digital chaos, crippling communications, shutting down power grids, and disrupting military logistics across key Iranian cities, paralyzing the nation's response. In Tehran, traffic lights blinked erratically, causing chaos on the streets, while state media was hijacked, interrupting broadcasts and spreading confusion among the population. The psychological blow was as severe as the physical destruction. Civilians watched in shock as their sense of security evaporated overnight, amplifying the impact of the strikes. Israel's reach was total. Air, land, and cyberspace were all battlefields, seamlessly integrated into a single, overwhelming offensive. Military analysts worldwide were stunned by the operation's unprecedented scope, speed, and effectiveness, calling it a new benchmark in modern warfare. Israel had struck hundreds of miles inside enemy territory, hitting multiple high-value targets with surgical precision, and withdrawing with minimal losses, a feat few thought possible. Operation Rising Lion was more than an attack. It was a statement to the world. Israel could strike anywhere, anytime, and reshape the strategic landscape at will. The strategic balance of the Middle East had shifted overnight, leaving regional leaders and global powers scrambling to reassess their positions in a changed world. Behind the jets and missiles was Mossad, Israel's legendary intelligence agency. For years, Mossad operatives infiltrated Iran, recruiting insiders and sabotaging key programs. They mapped nuclear sites, compromised air defenses, and sowed distrust among Iran's elite. Mysterious deaths and explosions plagued Iran's nuclear and military sectors, each a calculated move by Mossad. When the operation began, Mossad assets guided missiles, disabled radars, and fed false orders to Iranian command. The airstrike's precision was no accident. It was the result of years of covert groundwork. Mossad's silent war made the visible assault possible. The agency blinded and confused Iran, clearing the way for Israel's attack. In the shadows, Mossad had already won half the battle. The lions struck, but the ghosts had paved their path. Iran's response was swift and furious, a show of force that sent shockwaves across the region and beyond. Within just 48 hours, the skies above Israel were ablaze with missiles and drones, a relentless barrage that pushed the Iron Dome and other advanced defenses to their absolute limits. This was no mere symbolic retaliation. Military bases, strategic sites, and densely populated cities alike came under heavy fire, leaving destruction in their wake. Sirens wailed across Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, echoing through the night as terrified civilians scrambled for safety in bomb shelters, their lives upended in an instant. Most incoming threats were intercepted, but some managed to break through, striking homes and vital infrastructure, bringing the harsh reality of war directly to Israel's doorstep. Iran unleashed hundreds of missiles, while its proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Houthis in Yemen, opened new fronts, launching coordinated attacks from multiple directions. Israel's defenses were stretched thin, with soldiers and air defense crews working around the clock, facing a multi-pronged assault that tested their resolve and resources. Tehran's message was clear: Iran and its allies would not be cowed or intimidated, no matter the cost. The world watched in alarm as the reach and power of Iran's so-called axis of resistance became undeniable, reshaping the balance of power in the Middle East. Despite suffering significant damage from Operation Rising Lion, Iran demonstrated it could still strike back and inflict pain on its adversaries. The cycle of violence escalated rapidly, each side now fully committed, with no sign of backing down as the conflict intensified. The entire region teetered on the edge of a much wider war, uncertainty and fear gripping millions as military convoys mobilized and destruction spread. Retaliation had arrived with devastating force, and the stakes for all involved had never been higher as the world held its breath and watched events unfold. The cost of war was measured in shattered lives, not just destroyed targets. In Iran, Israeli strikes near cities killed civilians and overwhelmed hospitals. In Israel, some missiles evaded defenses, hitting homes and markets. Families lost in an instant. Sirens, sleepless nights, and fear became daily reality for millions. Casualties mounted, dozens dead in Israel, likely hundreds in Iran. Refugees fled northern Israel and southern Lebanon as violence spread. Humanitarian crises grew on both sides. Families searching rubble, communities uprooted. The war's true face was grief and trauma, not military triumph. For every strategic gain, there was a human tragedy. The stories of loss and survival defined the conflict. The scars would last long after the bombs stopped falling. This war was about survival and the future of the Middle East. Israel's goal: eliminate Iran's nuclear threat and, unspoken, perhaps topple the regime. For Israelis, a nuclear Iran was an existential nightmare. Force was seen as the only option. Some leaders hoped a crushing blow would spark regime change in Tehran. Iran, meanwhile, fought to preserve its revolution and regional influence. Tehran saw Israel as a Western outpost, bent on its destruction. Proxy groups like Hezbollah and Hamas were part of Iran's long-term strategy. Both sides viewed themselves as acting defensively, locked in a zero-sum struggle. These irreconcilable worldviews fueled the conflict's intensity. The war was not just about weapons, it was about identity, survival, and the future of the region. As war raged, the world looked to Washington. The U.S., Israel's closest ally, was caught off guard by the attack's scale. The White House urged restraint, fearing a wider war. America sent military aid and moved carriers to the region, but stopped short of direct intervention. This ambiguity left both Israel and Iran guessing. Would the US step in, or stay out? Oil prices soared, shipping routes faltered, and global markets panicked. The world waited for a clear American signal. The president's choice, intervene or abstain, would shape not just the war, but global order. For now, the superpower watched from the sidelines, but its shadow loomed large. The next move could change everything. The Israel-Iran war quickly threatened to engulf the entire Middle East. Gulf states scrambled to defend themselves, fearing Iranian missiles or proxy attacks. Publicly, they called for restraint. Privately, they prepared for the worst. Iran's allies, Hezbollah, the Houthis and Shia militias, joined the fight, targeting Israel and US interests. The conflict became a chaotic, multi-front struggle, deepening regional divides. Israel quietly coordinated with Sunni Arab states, forging unlikely alliances against Iran. The risk of miscalculation soared. A stray missile or a ground invasion could ignite a wider war. Diplomats raced to de-escalate, but escalation ruled the day. The war threatened global energy, trade and stability. The specter of nuclear escalation haunted every decision. The world faced a test: contain the firestorm, or risk a crisis not seen in generations. The flames spread and the world watched, hoping it wasn't too late.